Hello and welcome to Data Management. This is Module 1, Part 1. In this segment of Module 1, we'll spend a bit of time discussing the growth of data and introduce the term big data. But primarily we will be focusing on Harrah's, a company that used data very effectively to compete. Harrah's is now known as Caesars Entertainment. We'll take a look at their business strategy, how they use data to implement the strategy, the results they obtained, and then finally we'll conclude with an update to Caesars. In terms of growth of data, we're running out of words to describe the amount of data that's being generated and stored. So terabyte represents 1,000 gigabytes, a petabyte represents 1,000 terabytes, and so on. As you can see, when you're multiplying by a factor of 1,000, it adds up pretty quick. How much do we create? Well, it's estimated that in 2018, people are creating approximately 5 exabytes of data every day. And another estimate is that by 2025, that will have increased to 120 exabytes per day. That's a lot of data. Similarly, it was estimated in 2013 that 90% of our data created to that point have been created within the last 2 years. So 2011 to 2013. Well, today it is estimated that 90% of the data that has been created was created within the last year. So we're creating it at an increasing rate. Where does all that data come from? Well, there's the traditional transactional data, things like when you go to a grocery store and when you purchase products, the data contained in the product when the product is purchased So when you go to a grocery store, for example, and you purchase products, when the products are swiped, all that information, details about that purchase are recorded. Credit card swipes, purchases online, all of that is transactional data that is stored in what we refer to as transactional databases, which we'll be discussing in much more detail later. We also have social media postings, Twitter, Facebook content, emails, documents, policies, but by far the largest growth in data that is being captured and stored is audio and video recordings. So every time someone captures and records something on their iPhone that they upload to YouTube, that increases the amount of data that is captured and stored. You probably are quite familiar with the term big data, or at least have heard of it, and we'll be spending more time discussing big data later. Some people say that big data is simply anything that wouldn't fit in a spreadsheet. We'll get a little more definitive at some point in a later module. Question now is this a new problem or challenge for people or organizations? And the answer is kind of. If you were to go back 20 years from now, organizations were struggling to capture and store and process all of the data they had available to them. And that challenge is only being exacerbated today because of the growth and increase in the amount of data that's being captured. Let's take a look at one specific company and how they use data to compete. The story we're going to look at is actually somewhat dated. It takes place about 2000. And then again, we'll bring an update to what happened since then. So here we have a situation where we want to increase profits. And the industry we're talking about is the gaming industry. Harrah's is a company that was started in the 1930s by Bill Harrah. It was originally a bingo parlor. He had a number of casinos in the 40s and 50s. In the 1970s, he took his company public. He was the first gaming company to do that, and it was listed on the New York Stock Exchange. The company grew quite rapidly. By 1994, they had 21 casinos and employed 40,000 people. The competitors had different approaches to doing this. How they wanted to compete was to say, well, let's attract a lot of customers. And we'll attract customers by building these large, beautiful hotels, and we'll make them bigger and better and shinier. And that'll get people to come in and take a look and stay and gamble. That was a very popular strategy and it worked, but there was a downside to it. It cost a lot of money to build those hotels and casinos. That required the companies to take on a high debt burden. And so the high cost ate away at their returns. Harrah decided what we want to do is improve customer behaviors. That became their major goal. Well, if you're a gaming company, what does that mean? Well, think about it. What you want your customers to do is gamble more money, gamble more frequently, and gamble at more Harrah's casinos. So these were the goals that they articulated in the mid-1990s. Their business strategy was to use a brand approach. So make people quite aware of the Harrah's brand. They're going to reward customers who cross-play, who play at other Harrah's casinos, and they want to build lasting relationships with the customers. So that was the strategy that they articulated. Well, the next question is, how do we implement that strategy? Well, they decided to invest heavily in information systems. They created what they referred to as the WinNet system. What it does is collect a lot of customer data. It allows them to identify market segments, create appealing offers. They track the use of those offers, and they make that data available for both operational purposes and also analytical purposes. So to simplify it a little bit, they collect a lot of data, they analyze the data, they collect more data, and so on. And a big part of this strategy is built around the rewards card. Now today, many organizations use rewards cards, including all the gaming companies. In reality, Harrah's was one of the first gaming companies to start this approach, and it helped them quite excel. So what data sources do you think they collected data from? As many as they could. So their hotel records, so keep track of when a customer stayed, their address, preferences such as whether they like to smoke or not smoking, whether they attend tournaments and special events. They encouraged the customers to sign up for loyalty cards, and they did that by providing them with rewards. With the loyalty card, they keep track of every play the customer makes. They also keep track of offers that have extended to the customer and whether or not that offer was redeemed. That allowed them to do things like on-the-fly rewarding. So for example, if a customer goes to a blackjack table, provides their loyalty card when they purchase some chips, they can keep track of that customer over a period of time, and maybe they recognize that, oh, the customer's not doing too well, they're losing money. So they can send someone over to offer the customer something like, oh, looks like you're not having a good night. How about we'll give you a free dinner on us? As I mentioned before, it's a rewards-based, points-based system. The more the customer gambles, the more points they are able to accumulate, and then they can use those points for things such as rooms, shows, and so on. It also allows them to keep track of what, in this case, what slot machines are being frequented and which ones are not, so they can maximize the floor plan, move the games around if necessary to try and attract more people. It also allows them to generate offers based on customer segmentation. In the past, prior to implementing the WinNet system, people working at Harrah's relied on their experience and their gut feelings to make decisions. Well, in the mid-90s, they changed that. They said, okay, no more of these Harrah-isms. We're going to use scientific testing. So what they want to do is try to establish a relationship with a customer, strengthen that relationship, and then if the relationship doesn't seem to be as strong as it had been in the past, let's see if we can reinvigorate it. One of the ways of doing that is to conduct tests. So they try to find out what's going to work in terms of how do we get the right offer with the right message to the right customer at the right time. So they would define their objectives, establish the tests, treat the customers, execute that treatment, and then see what happens. Either the customer reacts positively to the treatment, the offer, the message, or they don't. They tracked what happened. They would then measure whether that behavior caused an increase in their profit or loss, what behavior change was involved, and then when they learn from that, define new objectives, create new tests, and just continue that virtuous cycle. And Harris has been doing that now for decades. This is an example of an email advertisement that a Harris customer received. Notice the image that they've got with this particular email. Well, the person who received this message is a Caucasian male, single, about 30 years of age. By segmenting their market, they are able to target specific market segments with specific advertisements. They know this individual goes to Las Vegas typically 3 or 4 times a year, and each visit he spends typically 2 to 3 nights, and so on. So they can tailor the message to that specific customer, or at least that specific customer segment. The initial results were quite favorable. Earnings doubled annually. They achieved a 72% internal rate of return, which is quite significant. Same-store sales grew by 14%. They were quite a bit higher than the local competitors, even though their competitors had much bigger, brighter, shinier casinos. Central region customers, those in the central region of Nevada, increased the number of trips per month. And cross-play, people who played at one Harris casino and then went to another, increased from 13% to 22%, which increased the revenues by $8 million. Just a quick update on Caesars Entertainment. So they changed the name to Caesars after Harris bought what was Caesars. They now have 47 properties in 5 countries, over 68,000 employees, over 45 million total rewards customers, and the net revenues in 2017 were $4.85 billion. Interestingly, in 2008-2009, Harris went on a spending spree. They purchased and acquired quite a few other casinos. That happened to be just about the time that there was a major recession. They were overloaded with debt, and in 2015, Caesars Entertainment, the casino operations part, went into bankruptcy. At that time, they had Total Rewards database with detailed data on over 45 million customers. How much do you think that database was worth? If you were to put a dollar figure on it, I mean, think about it. You've got detailed preferences on all these customers. You've got detailed records on when they have visited, what they have, what behaviors they engaged in, what games they played, how much they won or lost, and so on. If you were to sell that data to another company, how much would that be worth? Well, it turns out the estimated worth of that database was $1 billion. Think about that. When you think about companies and their assets, you typically think about things like buildings that they own, and manufacturing facilities. What we're talking about here is a database. It's records, detailed records of customer behaviors when they were engaged with this organization. And that asset was valued at $1 billion. So some takeaways from this story: power of using data in business. Most organizations, all organizations today, try to use data to achieve some goals. We have a structured database solution. So we didn't talk about that in very much detail. We're going to be looking at that much more detail in Module 2. But what Harris was using was what we refer to as a structured database solution. And then the potential value of the data, again, the customer information, purchasing behavior, and so on, in this particular case, was worth $1 billion. And that is the end of Data Management, Module 1, Part 1.